We will start as soon as Mr. Blaine gets back in here.
In other words,
Again.
might be a while? No, I'm just teasing. Just teasing.
Really, Jeff?
Yeah, really,
Really teasing?
really just teasing. Just kidding around. Hey, told you.
Okay, we'll stand for the national anthem.
How about the pledge?
Or the pledge, I mean, yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning,
Mr. Chair.
Mistakes done.
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Chair.
morning, everybody. Welcome.
That's next.
Okay, could I get approval of the calendar?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Are there any addition or deletions to the agenda? There are none, so could I get a motion?
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we got a motion
Second.
by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Sheriff's report. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Don't be nervous, we're all watching you
Yeah,
walk up here, you know.
All right, so we're gonna go over the month of October. It was a busy month. We had quite a bit of training going on. With the picture that's up there, we're busy doing fingerprinting. So last year, because of COVID, we were unable to fingerprint our kindergartners. So this year, we were put to task, I guess. We had to do not only our kindergartners, but our first graders in all the elementary schools throughout Morrison County. So it was good to get back into the schools again and accomplish that task. If you want to scroll up, please.
You betcha.
And you can go to the criminal complaints, which should be up one more page. So looking at our criminal complaints, we had 91 criminal complaints through the month of October, and I'll just highlight what we're seeing the most of. We have disturbing the peace, which is going to be the 13% in that 4 o'clock parcel, the orange piece of pie, if you will. And then moving over to the 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock position, we had in the green, we had 9 damage to property complaints. And then the 9 o'clock position, kind of the peach pie, we had 17 thefts. So that's kind of a highlight of our criminal complaints. If you move forward to our traffic complaints, you'll see we had 181 traffic citations. Just to highlight that, we had 19 written warnings. We had 22 speeding tickets that were citations issued. And then, of course, we had our overall piece of the puzzle that's the biggest was our verbal warnings, which was 124 verbal warnings out of the 181 stops that we made. In our 2-year comparison, we, for the most part, we kind of see things going up. Total complaints went up. Our criminal complaints were up by 1, I guess. Non-criminal complaints, civil process, all that kind of continues to go upward. Civil process mainly just because of COVID last year, we're kind of stuck in a rut where we weren't able to serve certain papers, but now we're very active again. Then our drug investigations went up, and then of course our total inmates went up as well. And part of that again is because of COVID, because now we're basically open. The jail is open for everybody, but there are outbreaks that we have to tend with time to time. And when there's an outbreak in our jail, then of course we have to be more selective until we know that everybody's safe and we can merge inmates together. So a lot of times we have to do isolation until we can figure out that the inmate is over COVID before we can blend them in a same housing unit. So just to highlight the inmates, you can see Morrison County, we averaged 28. We did have out-of-county inmates, which was Beltrami. We averaged 9, which brought our total to 37. I can tell you statewide, there's been staff shortages for correctional officers. So a lot of the jail's housing units, parts of it is being shut down. A lot of staff are finding out that they really don't want to deal with mental health, and they find out that they can get a job, somewhere in their own community for about the same amount of money with a lot of less liability. So that's what's happening. But luckily in Morrison County, we are fully staffed, with the exception of our jail administrator, which I'll talk in a little bit about. But we're fully staffed and we got everybody pretty much trained up to where they need to be. So knock on wood, we're doing okay, but I can tell you a lot of our neighboring counties and outstate Minnesota and Metro is suffering, so. And then just our out-of-county inmates, when you look at the Beltrami that we talked about, Beltrami inmates, we had 14 for payment, and the revenue collected was $15,400. Any questions on that at all?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blaine.
Sean, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sean, this past year, we provided mutual aid to other municipalities and counties with everything from public protests and things like that to pipeline activity and providing public safety there. Are all of our troops, all of our officers back in the county now, or do we have any county officers out on mutual aid right now?
So, Commissioner, everybody is back in place. I can tell you that we did help out Aiken County on a few occasions. We also assisted Wadena County on a number of occasions. Wadena County, we not only helped out as far as manpower, but we used other resources such as our command post, our side-by-side, our transport van. They really relied on us heavily, and we were there for like a 2-week period, off and on. But yes, all of our resources are back, and all of the time for personnel and equipment, et cetera, has been charged out, which will get fully reimbursed.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski.
Sheriff, if I may go back to staffing in the jail, which is wonderful that we are up to staff, obviously excluding your jail administrator. Statewide, it's an issue, and I get that totally. Can you tell me, or just help me out, I believe I know, but help me out. I sit on many public safety committees, as you clearly know. One in particular is a 911 telecommunicators work group that I sit on, and I hear constantly statewide, dispatch centers are thin, at the very best, are thin. I think we're pretty fortunate where we live, community and staffing, that I believe we are currently up to staff, where I know other counties are not. They're thin as thin can be. And part of the reason behind that is that whether it's days, nights, weekends, holy days, or holidays, in many instances, you can go to McDonald's and, for all practical purposes, make the same money that you're making as a 911 dispatcher. Comments?
I think, yeah, my comments, Commissioner, I respect that statement, is you are right. We are blessed here in Morrison County. We are fully staffed. However, where we find out where there's some bumps in the road is this thing called COVID that none of us can prevent. And luckily, Morrison County hires great people, and we're able to utilize these people as our resources, not only the people who work in dispatch, but we've also recently reached out to one of our past dispatchers who's employed through DMV. So talking about using resources, that's what we're able to do to kind of fill that void when this thing called COVID hit us. And, but yes, when I look out and what I see what these dispatchers and correctional officers do on a daily basis, I can see the strain put on them. I can see the stress. I can see what they have to deal with, and there's no doubt in my mind why these other counties are struggling. Luckily for Morrison County, you know, we've been running good, but again, COVID has hit us, and we've been able to get through, and we're hoping that this is at the, you know, lot of our staff unfortunately had to go through this, so we're hoping that we're looking good for the future, but yeah, definitely we're blessed.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yep.
Anybody got any other questions for Sean, or you got more, or?
No, but I'd maybe set the stage if I could, Sean.
Sure.
Because so one of the things that's not on your agenda today is, Sean is, as we know, he hired a jail administrator. They now are no longer to be a jail administrator. And so Sean met with Matt, myself, Beth, and Jason yesterday to talk about trying to expand the pool in reposting the jail administrator position. And so when he was interviewing for the previous jail administrator, he'd learned from the Mille Lacs County Sheriff how they have increased the pool of candidates available to be jail administrators. So Sean would like to move in that direction, and he'll talk a little bit about it, how he can expand the pool of eligible candidates.
Absolutely, thank you. So, yeah, it's one of those things where we did an internal and external post for our jail administrator. We had like 5 to 7 candidates external. I can tell you that 2 candidates showed up. And one of the external candidates was a standout, and that person has moved on to another position within the county. So what I'm looking at doing versus sending this out again, knowing that I'm probably going to be getting the same pool of candidates, is I was looking at other options. So I reached out to the MSA director, Minnesota Sheriff's Association director, and I wanted him to put an email out to all sheriffs for me, just saying, what other options are there? Are there any licensed jail administrators within the state of Minnesota? If so, send me your feedback. I can tell you, I put this out last week, and I'm still getting responses, but as of now, I have a file full of, there's at least 10 to 12 jails within Minnesota. So what does that mean for us? I can tell you internally, I definitely would have some qualified candidates that would put in that are currently licensed. The problem is they don't want to lose their retirement package. The retirement package now is they pay into police and fire. They're not in a corrections fund and or a coordinated fund like our dispatchers are. So of course, as an employer, that means that the employer would have to contribute more into the retirement. I did have Mary send you an email.
Yep.
We can put that chart up, but I'll keep talking for a little bit. So basically what I'm looking at doing is just expanding my options. I want to keep it the same, plus expand. So in other words, I want to open it back up, not only to non-licensed personnel, but I want to give licensed personnel a chance as well. I can tell you the step and grade is going to be the same. The amount of money paid for this position will be the same for the job description and class. The only change would be if the selected candidate was a licensed officer, and they're the ones that are the top candidate and they're selected, then I would just ask that they're able to stay in their current retirement, which would be police and fire, if that makes sense.
I'm gonna get to the difference for the county.
Yeah, so I do have a handout, and while Brad's trying to get that up, I can tell you that we kind of put a graph together to give the board a visual what that would look like. If we can pull that in. So if you can look at the top, you can see a jail administrator who's currently in the correctional fund and a jail administrator who would be in the police and fire fund. So what I did is if you look under, there's an employee contribution, which probably is not going to affect the county. So let's go over to the employer, which would be on the far right. You can see the percentage that would be paid to the employer, or I'm sorry, that the employer would have to pay would be 17.7% versus what they would currently pay for a jail administrator who is non-licensed, which would be 8.75%. So if you take the current position that is in a correctional fund, non-licensed, and you take the jail administrator current position, you put it in a police and fire fund, you're looking at the employer difference somewhere between $5,800 and $7,600 extra money that would have to be paid per year, if that makes any sense. And then what we did was, really, that's really all we have to look at, but we also broke it down, like, let's say a licensed deputy was someone who would be selected, whether internal or external. You know, you're looking at a grade 25, and the jail administrator, police and fire is a grade 31. So again, there's more pay than what the deputy pay would be. But if you looked at what the difference the employer would pay, you're looking at a $2,000 to $2,700 difference extra annually for the retirement benefit package. So I just kind of wanted to break it down to give you a heads up. That's kind of the route I want to go, just because I think we owe it to Morrison County and the public that we serve. This is a big position. I don't take this lightly. This is someone that, they're like my second in command. They're overseeing the daily operations of the jail, which is very, very important. So with that,
Well, and the reason he's bringing it, he needs to post it, he needs kind of passive approval from the board to post it in that light. So then if he does hire a person who wants to stay in the police and fire retirement fund, a resolution will come forward to the board, and you would have to approve that for them to be jail administrator if that's what they would request. So that's why he's bringing it here today, is just to hear if there's any concerns if he were to post it for both either a non-licensed or a licensed person. Because once if licensed person becomes the top candidate, that has to come forth with a resolution.
correct. And with the timeline, we're looking at our jail administrator, our current one, Scott McKissick, he's looking at leaving the end of December. So I'm hoping that we can, like Brad said, I'm trying to get in here quick enough where we can hopefully get approval from the board so we can move forward immediately.
Commissioner Lemire?
I just got one quick question. So there's a retirement fund for correctional officers, correct? And then there's the police and fire fund.
Yes, sir.
So you can choose which retirement?
So what it is now is if you're a correctional officer, you are in a coordinated fund.
Yep.
If you are a correctional officer, you are in a correctional officer fund. And if you're licensed officer, you're in a police and fire fund.
Right.
But if I offer this as a licensed position, you would have to be licensed to begin with.
So then you could go in the police and fire
Then you
fund?
could stay in police and fire, correct?
That's
If
how
the,
you label it? Is that what you mean?
correct,
Or-
if the board approves. However, if the standout applicant is not licensed, then I would have the ability to keep them in that, they'd still be getting the same pay, but their retirement would stay the same. Because there's no way I could require from them that they have to be licensed if they're not immediately, because they'd have to get their 2-year degree and go through the licensing sanctioning.
So you can't really pick, because if you're already licensed, then you can stay in the license. But if you're not licensed, you can't move to the licensed pension fund.
Okay.
The difference is you wouldn't have many candidates apply for that job if they had to lose their retirement on their other job.
Correct.
Correct, that's where the problem comes in.
Correct. I'm just looking at expanding the pool and having more candidates, to look at. And as I mentioned, we had 2 external candidates that applied previously.
Commissioner Wincher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as the salary for the jail administrator, is that going to be, because I know Mr. Matuzik's been here for many, many years, and he's probably at his highest grade or whatever the step would be. So this new administrator would be less correct as far as salary goes, just because of maybe the experience, or is that, and then I understand the employee as far as contributions, but as far as the salary, there should be some savings there, I'm assuming, if you hire somebody new, right?
Absolutely, Commissioner. The only thing that would prevent me to saying 100% is, let's say I had a jail administrator who's licensed from somewhere else. And they came in and they said, I'm already making this pay, which kind of would align with our pay scale, but then if it's a higher step, I would have to come back to the board and ask approval for you gentlemen to accept that. But normally, yes, if someone's coming in, we're gonna be putting them at a step or a step, I guess, less than where Scott's currently at, where our current jail administrator's at.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Commissioner Jelinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, I've got a couple of different questions regarding licensing. Why? And I think that's fair. Why would you be looking for someone licensed? I'm anticipating that the answer is going to be leadership. That's just my anticipation. But why licensed versus non-licensed? And then, as we further that up, and we're talking about non-licensed versus licensed, what happens, are we comparing the same person as, let's just pretend you have a 10-year veteran on the road, let's just say, for example, and that 10-year veteran meets all the qualifications, wow, end of discussion, you're probably going to hire that person. And I understand the dollars and that, I get that. What happens if you just have a licensed police officer just out of school? Perhaps we could say license eligible. Would we be in the same boat? Would we be talking the same conversation? Because as of that second, that individual has no knowledge, because that person has not received a paycheck yet, of police and fire versus the correctional retirement. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense, what I just said.
Yeah, I can kind of address it the best I can, Commissioner. So why license? We go back to expanding our pool, trying to get more candidates. I think, as I mentioned, if we push this out as it is right now, if I had 5 candidates that applied external and only 2 showed up, this is so fresh. Here we are 3 weeks later. I push this out again. Who's to say I'm going to get 15 more candidates? We're kind of in a time crunch, if you will.
Yep.
Licensed out of school and eligible to be licensed, if I had the time, I would surely look at that, but licensed out of school, we're looking for someone who already has the leadership amongst them, someone who's well-rounded, has the life experiences, if you will, someone who is going to lead not only, our staff, but be visible to the public and be a leader as well. So I think you have to have that background with you before, and be well-established before you're selected for that job. And then, again, yes, we're looking for someone to bring in that leadership package, someone who's motivated, someone who's going to continue to have a drive to bring in revenue, for our jail and for this county.
Thank you.
Just one other comment. I make one example that Sean gave yesterday, another efficiency that would happen if it ends up being a licensed peace officer, is that they can investigate in the jail if there's an incident versus bringing up another deputy to do that. So that was an efficiency that could happen if a licensed person is hired as well.
Yeah, as I'm going through this folder, and I apologize, a lot of this is fresh, but as I'm looking at other agencies within Minnesota who have jail administrators that are licensed, they're really looking at where are we lacking. Sometimes they're helping out with transportation. Sometimes they're helping escorting, especially an inmate who is very unruly. A lot of times, instead of the chief deputy being in charge of the security of the courts, i.e. the bailiffs, this person will do that role as well. So yeah, there's different faucets that you can have them take charge of. So with the assaults that occur in the jail and the criminal damage to property and things like that happen, instead of sending the deputy up, that could be another function for the jail administrator.
I like it, thank you.
Anybody else have anything else?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blaine?
So, Sean, with the information you have in your folder and what you've been able to pull together in a relatively short period of time, are the indications that if this board were to grant you the ability to open this up to licensed officers or licensed candidates out there, that you feel confident or very confident that we would have a larger pool to choose from?
Yes, Commissioner, and the only reason I say that is because I have spoken to plenty of jail administrators who have told me what I mentioned prior, is that because of the lack of staff, their housing units aren't as big as they are. They're shutting certain corridors off. So I'm guessing that there may be other jail administrators that may be interested. I can tell you that I'm aware of deputies, licensed deputies, who are leaders on the street that would be interested. And I'm assuming if I was to push this out, there'd be other licensed staff externally, whether they're in a jail setting or a command staff setting on the road per se, doing officer functions, that would put in as well.
Mr. Chair, understanding the importance of of that position within our organization's structure, I think this is the right thing to do, and I'll make a motion that we don't need.
Do not need to make a motion today. We just needed kind of the head nod from the commissioners that he can post this way, and then if a person who is hired is licensed, then he would bring a resolution forward if they want to remain in the police and fire fund.
Thank you, Brad.
Mr. Chair, one last point here. So if by some chance that you would hire somebody within the organization, a deputy sheriff that would qualify, then we would also just say, go ahead and backfill it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be, sheriff would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I'll support this to move forward.
I will too, yep. You guys okay with it? Okay. We're okay with
All right,
it.
thank you, everybody, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Have a good day, Sheriff.
You too.
Next, we'll have extension report. Welcome, Nathan. How are you today?
All right, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Morning, Nathan.
It's been a little while.
Nathan, good grief, and I'm looking in front of me underneath the agenda, and it says brief report.
Brief.
They must have not thought you were coming.
No,
Come
no.
on.
Yeah, they never do account for me. So I actually took notes this time. So we'll try to make this as brief as
And
I
Nate, I
can.
do hear you on the radio, so.
That's good. Yeah.
so I know
and
you're out and about.
yeah,
On what
so
radio station? KLTF.
It's KLTF.
There you
Okay. All right. I always get those middle two consonants inverted. I never don't know why, but. So you guys have the report there. I'm not necessarily going to hang on that. I'm going to simply talk about what we saw this last year from a crop standpoint. So we know that, of course, this last season we had, wasn't the worst drought on record, but one of the worst droughts. I believe we hit top 3, at least until August. We were heading towards number 1 had we not gotten some rains there in August. So had some pretty rough weather this year that really hit us hard. I had a couple of phone calls from Central Morrison County. Some guys were chopping corn in the last week of July. So really early, not much that we could do there. And in terms of grain yields, especially in terms of corn, I don't think that will be reflected in NAS data, so the National Ag Statistics Service, simply because we have a lot of dairies and beef production here in this county and others that allowed for that lower yielding corn grain to be taken for corn silage. So thanks to those guys for standing up and at least helping make some of this work well for us. But I'm going to go through just kind of a crop by crop report here, starting with corn. Something that we need to be looking out for here moving into next year is tar spot. So I got back from vacation in the middle of October and got a call from our plant disease expert specialist from the university going, I got a report in that we have confirmed tar spot in Benton County. And I said, oh, well, that's new to me. And so we went ahead and I got a hold of the agronomist who had sent it into Iowa, and we got a bunch of samples taken. The biggest thing here is with tar spot is that it's relatively new to the U.S. in general. I believe it's either 2015 or 2016 when it was first introduced into the U.S. It's a South American disease. It's moving through the U.S. rapidly, and it takes a huge chunk of yield if it comes in early enough. And that's what we're really watching. So far, it hasn't done it in Minnesota, but you get down in states like Iowa and Illinois, and you're looking at small chunk of corn yield followed by anywhere, depending on if it gets in early enough, up to complete yield loss in some instances. So very dangerous issue, very big issue. A lot of our ag companies are working real hard to find hybrids that can deal with it, and they're having some success. There are definitely hybrids out there that are doing better than others, and so they're working on evaluations. But that's something where if you guys find it, we need to get that reported into the university so that we could keep track of it where it's at. The stuff we found came in late. It was most likely wind blown. It was in the top part of the crop canopy, so not yield limiting, but it lives in residue and it doesn't seem to care about our winters up here. So that means it'll stick around for a while. Outside of that, we also had corn rootworm issues. As it turns out, we need water to build the proteins that are in most of our genetically modified corn hybrids. And that means that when the corn rootworm eats the roots of the plant and we don't have water, those proteins aren't present and it doesn't kill the rootworms. So we had an insane number of corn rootworm issues this year, and it wasn't necessarily that they were overwhelming the traits so much as it's just the traits weren't working because we were in the middle of a drought. So both of those are something I'm going to be monitoring fairly closely into 2022, just simply because of the fact that they pose a big issue to us here in terms of crop production. For alfalfa, we had a similar situation with weevils in that what our theory, we don't know this for sure, but our theory is that the reason why we had weevil issues all season long was less because of our insecticides weren't working and more because we had drought periods followed by a little bit of rain, which actually caused a few more eggs to hatch. And so instead we hit these humps basically where we would spray, we'd kill the current flush, and then we'd have a little bit of rain, and then we get another flush in. And so we had alfalfa weevils just really bad this year. In crops you wouldn't think of, we saw alfalfa weevils even in soybeans, including some other like alfalfa caterpillars in soybeans. So they were crossing species, and it's just a lot of it's just because of the drought conditions that we had. So a couple of things there. What are we going to be doing about this moving forward here? So as of this moment, we will be, again with tar spot, I'll be monitoring that. We'll be doing some work on that. For corn rootworm, we're hoping to put in some yellow sticky traps, especially in Stearns County where it hit the worst, but we'll be monitoring that, and I will hopefully be utilizing our interns to help with that process so that way we can keep track of these rootworms as they move north. The northern corn rootworm, of course, was our big issue, but the western corn rootworm is starting to move in, so we have to keep track of both. As for alfalfa, there is a current grant that the university itself is working on that I'm hoping we can get worked into this area because alfalfa is such a big part of our cropping systems here in the central part of the state. Some other things that we're working on, been catching wind of some manure applications in alfalfa actually being knifed into alfalfa. So that is a relatively new practice that has been adopted by a handful of growers and dairymen in the area. This is liquid manure. The biggest thing we're looking at here is that if this is a good way to put on our manure in the future, we're going to be looking at environmental conditions. We're hopefully going to be looking at nutrient use by the crop itself. And then from my perspective, plant disease health is a huge thing that I think we're missing here. But if there is some validity to this practice, we're really interested in finding out. And so this is something that we're hoping to have some demonstrations, hoping to get some research going here with the university and work on some of this because it's got me intrigued. There's a handful of growers I know who are doing it, and so we're currently working on finding growers to have this. We did have the weed management plots in Stearns County this last year. We had about 30 people attend the field day we had, and we had a couple of great guys we worked with. It was relatively close to each other. That data will hopefully be coming out in a report here soon. I'm sitting on it right now. I finally got into Excel, but I haven't had a chance to run it through R yet for analyzing it. The alternative forage plots, we had about 40 people at that field day. We've got that data going. The forage quality samples are currently sitting on campus waiting to be ground up and run through the NIR machine. So waiting on that. PPATs, we will have one here actually in this exact room on February 7th. That will be private pesticide applicator training, so we do one here every year. That will be from noon to 4, and so that will be happening. And then part of education on the tar spot, weed management, and alfalfa issues, we've got a couple things. First off, the tour de forage will be January 26th in Melrose, or at least that's the plan at the moment. First half of the day, we'll be talking specifically about forage topics. Second half will be dairy programming. And then on March 17th, I'm working with my counterpart in Wright, Meeker, McLeod, and Adam Austin. He's our crops educator down there. We will be doing a crop and pest management update here in Little Falls, right here in this room as well. On March 17th, that'll be 10 to 2, Compeers providing lunch. So some big things coming up here, but the big thing here is we're going to be looking at 2021. What do we need to learn from that, and how do we prepare for that in 2022 here?
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions for Nathan?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jelinski?
I have to ask, and I'm asking because I don't know. Tar spot. Am I
So-
even saying it right?
Yes, tar spot. Yep.
What is that?
It is a plant fungal disease. It's a corn disease. It looks exactly as it's named. Little black specks, shiny on the top, raised. If you take your thumb and you try to press into it, it will not come off the plant. And that we found that out we had, the day we went out and sampled, it was right after a frost. And some of the stuff in the lower part of the canopy, you couldn't get it off. If you flip the leaf over, you could see even it starts coming through the other side of the leaf as well. And when you see it, it's really hard to misidentify it just because it looks like something you'd see, freshly laid asphalt almost.
So it's not on the cob itself?
No, not on the cob, it's on the
plant.
leaf. So
Okay,
basically, we're destroying photosynthetic tissue at that point. The green tissue of the plant, we're destroying it with this disease.
And then I need to follow that up with, when does that start? Does it start as a little plant, or does it wait until it's mature?
It really depends on when we get the proper conditions. Remember, we have the disease triangle, so it likes warm, moist conditions. If you recall, we had that right at the end of September, heading right towards the end of September, heading into October there, and that's what we think triggered it and managed to get it up here.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report, Nathan. Next, social service report.
All right, I'm going to have Cindy come up, and she has a healthcare report that we're going to share with the board around medical assistance and the Minnesota Eligibility Technology System.
Welcome, Cindy.
Good morning, gentlemen. Okay, I'll just get going. The first chart shows you the phone calls received within the healthcare unit only, and you can see that we are down, and that's due to COVID because we're still under the PHE, the emergency health. Good Lord.
Public health emergency.
Thank you.
Federal
I had the
public
right
health
letters.
emergency is still declared. So it does
Until-
affect some of our federal programs.
Yeah, until the end of the year at this point, if they don't extend it further. So that is the reason calls are down. We're not able to close anyone on healthcare currently unless they request it, they pass away, or they move out of state. Otherwise, they remain open even if they're over income or asset guidelines. The second page is the amount of documents received just within the healthcare unit that were processed. I have a note here too that in the month of September, prior, due to COVID, we weren't processing any renewals. Now they have sent through the Maxis renewals. Last month, each worker processed about 50 renewals, and in September, that was 60 apiece. That's up from about 35 normally what they would do. Even though we can't close it, we have to enter the information so it's there once we can move forward. The next one is just the cases that are on Maxis, and we did get some good news from DHS with that. We were concerned that because we weren't processing renewals, that we would run into a situation where all of a sudden they would say we're gonna process all health applications and renewals, and we would end up with everything being due the same month of the year. Luckily for us, they have decided that they will go with a year's date. So if somebody had a review due now in November, they should have a review 6 months from then. However, what we're doing is we're putting in November of '22, and then in November of '22, when we do the renewal, we'll then schedule out their next 6 months. So we get to stay on the same schedule is what that boils down to.
With all of our waivers, we've been worried that they'll turn the spigot off and we have to do everybody, but they've so far staggering a lot of them, so.
Yeah, and Maxis is the one that they've done for us already. Metz is our big concern because that's a much larger caseload for us. Speaking of Metz, the next screen, I actually have updated figures as of November 3rd, and I do believe I have down on the bottom there September, which should have been June. But in any case, I want you to know that the number of cases currently in Morrison County on Metz is 3,115. Otherwise, 6,692 people that are on some sort of health care through Morrison County. The next screen is Medicare premiums paid on behalf of clients. We have a total of 922 people in Morrison County where we pay their Medicare premium for them. The next slide is the cost-effective health insurance reimbursement. That is, we make a determination as to whether the insurance they can get through an employer is cheaper for us to pay than a MA capitation payment. And currently, this is a number of cases that we have where that is the case. Next was counties comparable in size, just some points of interest, I guess, to look at. Then counties in the region, Morrison and Todd are on the bottom of that scale for percentage of clients within the county receiving healthcare assistance, which is a good thing. Next 2 pages, I just gave you the income and asset guidelines for every healthcare program that is offered. And that's it. Questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Cindy? Not, we
Thank
thank
you.
you very
All
much.
right,
Thanks,
thank
Cindy.
you.
Thank you,
That was
Cindy.
brief, Sydney.
Next, public health report.
No, I have one other social service request, replacing a current DD worker. We had an individual who became a licensed clinical social worker, so she is moving off to do outpatient therapy, and I'm requesting to replace that position. Caseloads continue to remain full for all of our DD workers, and these positions are generally funded by waivers and federal funds.
We need a motion?
Yes. we
I'll
do.
move on it.
Got a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Then public health. One item for public health is a new establishment license for Royal Blends in Royalton.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Land Service Department. Amy, welcome.
Good morning, Amy.
Morning, Miss Amy.
Just have one item for you today, and this is on the tails of the Planning Commission meeting from last week. This is a request from Jason and Carolyn Frank for an interim use permit for a wood products manufacturing interim use permit. This was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with one condition, and that condition is the interim use permit shall terminate when the following members of the Frank family no longer own the property, and that is Jason, Carolyn, Mitchell, or Benjamin Frank.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Blaine, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion? Commissioner Wincher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I know the answer, but maybe if you could explain it to
You bet.
why do we put a end date on it?
Yeah, That's a great question, because they're different than a conditional use permit. So conditional use permits run with the land, and it runs into perpetuity as long as they're abiding by the conditions, and also that the use does not cease for more than a 1-year period. Interim use permits by state law, the big difference is that it's a land use right that runs with the land. However, by state law, it is required to put an end date. So that can look different ways. In this case, it's until a particular event happens.
Great explanation.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to preface this by saying I don't know if this is the time or the place. And if it's not, cut me off. I'm good with that.
Ask and we'll find out.
I want to ask, I want to
I'm
bring up the,
nervous
I want to
now.
bring up the conversation to Amy. First of all, when the folks were here for this meeting
Yes.
and told of what they do currently
Yes.
and what the plan is of what they're going to do, it was a very impressive time. They
They
obviously.
demonstrated they knew what they were doing.
They know what
Yes,
they're doing.
yes.
It's very clear to that. The township was here, and the township had
Yes.
a concern of roads.
Yes.
Once again, and it was just a concern. My question to you is this the time or the place to talk about, why do we talk about roads? That's my question, is
Mm-hmm. No, that's a
more than
perfect-
anything. It's not that I'm not in support of these folks and their business, because I absolutely am.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm more questioning the question that is asked all the time,
Mm-hmm.
well, does this have any bearing on any of our roads? Should we not have access? Should our roads not have that kind of access? Can you kind of jump on that a little bit, or help me out a little?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
If I may?
The reason why we have discussion about roads is because of one of the criteria that an applicant needs to meet or demonstrate that they meet is criteria number 1, and that is the use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. So more often than not, the big discussion always is centered around the road and the roadway, because every use has access to a road, so that's generally why we enter into that discussion. And it's the obligation of the planning commission and the county board to look at, do we have adequate infrastructure available to serve this use? And so that's why we go down the road of that discussion, because it's a criteria that the applicant needs to meet. Does that answer your question, or do you want me?
No, not really,
Okay,
because
so tell me-
shouldn't I be able to have access to my property, to my business? Do I not pay the proper taxes? Maybe I'm just off
So
somewhere else here, and I'm not
I want to make
on the
sure I'm
right path.
understanding what you're asking. So are you asking, is it fair to have a discussion regarding what burden a particular use that we allow in the zoning district puts on a road, and whether or not the applicant should bear that burden, or whether
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
typical of what should be expected of the road authority to provide service? Is
All
that
of the
what you're
above,
asking?
yeah,
Okay.
I am.
I think that's a policy decision, honestly, that the county board needs to have on whether or not what your understanding of where that property tax goes, you know, as a taxpayer within that district, if what they're paying and what the use of that is offsets any of that. Also, it's an examination of the uses that we allow within the zoning district, and whether or not some of those uses are aligned with the types of roads that service those parcels. So I think it's twofold. It's a discussion, and I think that this cracked the door for that discussion on, okay, are the uses that we allow in the ag zoning district burdensome? I guess that's and I think that cracked the door for that question as far as, is a use like this overburdensome where we'd have to take a closer look at this? Or no, these are the uses that are allowed, and that's one of the things that our local road authorities need to be prepared to support. So I guess that would be my answer to that. So I don't have an answer. I think it opens the door for a discussion.
And we're probably not going to come to an answer with that, because I don't know that we will. Because it's my opinion, we all pay tax to drive on roads. Should I be able to pull a trailer down this road? Well, why shouldn't I be able to pull a trailer down this road? Should I be able to go down this load with a 3,000-pound load or a 30,000-pound load, whatever the case of numbers are?
Yeah.
And of course, I understand very clearly of road restrictions, as an example, or what roads are capable of. But if we look on any road that we drive on anywhere, if a contractor wants to drive through with whatever size of machine they're driving down that road.
Yep. I guess the thing I would say is, when we hear from the road authority, if a road authority says, we have a concern because we've seen this type of use before, and this is what we've seen it do before, and we know this because we've seen it, we've had to deal with it, we've had to re-gravel, it has increased our maintenance demand on that road, that would be something that you would have a discussion, rather than someone saying, we just want them to respect the road. What does that mean? What does that mean? And how do you condition that? So I think that would be something that you're always looking for feedback from your road authority. The other thing I'll say is we are slated to have discussion about the ag zoning district and the performance standards of feedlots and all of that. This might be a great time to take a look at the use chart within the ag zoning district and look at those uses that may be a little bit more burdensome on the road system.
In all respect, thank you.
You're very
Commissioner
welcome.
Blaine, did you have a question?
I wanted to make a comment, Mr. Chair, if I could, in respect to the inquiry by Commissioner Jelinski, in the sense that we've had this discussion in the past, and I think this is where that dialogue between applicants who are looking at economic development within Morrison County and then within townships, and we look at the benefit of this kind of economic development within said township, and township officials and township boards, much like us and the county board, also look at when we have when we promote economic development within our county, we also assume responsibility to be supportive in the infrastructure that is necessary to be in place for that economic development. Township, I think in most cases within our county, we see township officials who step up to the plate and say, we support economic development within our township, whether it's agricultural, it's commercial or industrial business or whatever, and they are willing to step up and provide that infrastructure because they know in return there will be increased revenue through taxation within their township that would help support for that infrastructure. But I think that's where that dialogue between applicants looking for economic development and those local officials and the county officials to address that. And there has to be, in my mind, there has to be responsibility by all units of government, local units of government, and our county units of government, that if we really truly are believe that economic development is right and proper and wanted, that we have to step forward and provide the infrastructure to allow that to happen. And I think this is almost a fundamental example of that within our process.
Mr. Chair? I think that's exactly the role the development review team meeting plays in this. And that is why we pull the township in and notify the township when anyone's even thinking about a use that requires a conditional use permit or an interim use permit, to let them know that we have this proposed use, we're talking about this proposed use in your area. You're invited to the development review team meeting to share with us if you have any first blush concerns or thoughts. So they're invited at that, and then they receive the same packet you do for the public hearing. So they are very well informed of the scope of the request. So, excuse me, when you said that that's, every level of government has that role, I believe we fulfill that role in that way with that development review team meeting and the direct correspondence with the townships to make sure that they're fully informed of what we're considering that may impact their infrastructure.
And to that point, Mr. Chair, if I may, I also want to underscore the fact that that's an important element to be taken into consideration and I know that is by members of the planning commission, when they look at applications for permits, CUPs or IUPs, and/or variances, I suppose we could say too, but also that this board also should and does give levity to when it's our position then to make a decision on a permit, much as we've done this morning here too, that we do have input from the other local units of government, whether it's townships or municipalities in there. And for me, I think that's very important that we have that dialogue with those local units of government and recognize their wishes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Does anybody have any other questions? Now, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have today.
Thank you, Ms. Amy.
Do we want to take a break?
Simple.
Or do we want
Good to go.
No. We'll do motor vehicle next. Welcome, Chelsea. She'll do the auditor's report. She'll do the auditor's report too. We'll try to stop.
Good morning.
Chelsea?
Morning, Chelsea.
Good morning. This morning, I have for you for motor vehicle a request to approve a purchase of a one-time Audio Manager Pro license for the DMV speaker system utilizing the Capital Equipment Fund.
Could I get a motion on that?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Blaine. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Wincher.
Thank you. Just to make it real brief, we had a discussion about this with Chelsea at one of our planning meetings, so it's not like, again, that this is being dumped on us here at this meeting. We had a very great discussion, and she explained why we're looking at this. So again, I'll ask you, could you give us a brief discussion or a brief comment on why you're asking for this?
Certainly. I'm requesting to purchase this software license for the DMV speaker system. So the kiosk that we've had in the DMV office allows for speaker capability for calling ticket numbers and transactions. And so we tested it out, and we purchased speakers for the ceiling within the motor vehicle department. And so when we purchased the speakers, at the time, technology, along with myself, were unaware that there was software needed to connect the kiosk along with a computer that correlates with the speakers. And so I have asked technology what routes we can go, because right now we're on a temporary software support for 30 days. That's the time is ticking. And so they said we could look at this software license with this dollar amount, and I explained that I was caught off guard, and what other options do we have? And so we came up with we could utilize a bridge. He spoke with our vendor, and our vendor, actually he spoke, IT spoke with multiple vendors to purchase a bridge. It would cost roughly $200. However, we are running into the economic supply and demand chain problems with timing to get that piece. And so they explained that it would be anywhere from 5 to 6 months to get that part. And so with the costs and the timeline, I am bringing this request forward as IT has informed me that if we were to purchase the software, it would be installed and available tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Jelinski.
And I'll just comment, and I know I said this or something similar to it during planning. No fault of yours, and I absolutely mean that. The vendor sold us a product that we know works, and it did work. And all of a sudden, we come into this hiccup, and now the vendor comes back and says, oh, but you have to have this other piece. I get it. It was just something that, under no fault of motor vehicles, I'm gonna say fault of the vendor for not telling everything, and this is everything. So I'm good with this. IT has obviously also researched this. Chelsea, it is what it is. That's life in the fast lane.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. You want to do your auditor's report right away?
Yes, I can. Next on the agenda, I have a request that you see annually. This is a request to approve the County Club Trail Agreement, along with a resolution supporting the Eastern Morrison County Four-Wheeler Club and Sioux Line South Recreational Trail funding.
I'll move on this, Mr. Chair.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Next on the agenda, you'll see the month end for October 31st, 2021, cash on hand. This is a monthly report that you get that is directed to you by statute. So you are to receive this report monthly. So this just is an overview of where our funds were at month end of October of this year and by fund. Any questions at all?
Any questions on that? Not, we thank you.
And then next but not least, I have a request to approve all of the bills.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to pay all the bills.
Got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. This is roll call. Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
And aye. Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chelsea.
We're gonna take a little break here, 5-minute break.
Sure,
And
that'd be
then
awesome.
before we
Thank you.
get to Steve and. Okay.
Morning, Johnny.
Steve called in reinforcements or what?
Safe travels, Greg. See you later. Take care. We'll keep in touch on things.
Yeah, let us know if you come down to AMC, we can make sure things are.
Yeah, I'll do that.
You know how that goes. Well, Commissioner, you have a good day or good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. Oh, yeah. Yeah, thanks.
All due respect,
feel that too.
Sir. He made it look, he'd go on a number of days. You just need to buy more land. That's how it works. How old are you? 4 years? Yep, I would say. That's what it takes. I would say 4 last year. Oh, we have to. So I'd say yes. What do you think, 2 years? Probably average. Average, yeah. But a lot of times people think the year review.
Zach, I guess it's just you and me next.
Here we go, yeah.
Everybody left us.
It'll be nice and quick.
Yeah. Well, we got county board.
No, I was gonna do this. When Matt was out there, did he hear the news?
Not at the moment, but I guess I haven't know that. I'm sure he will.
Thank you. I know, Good, I'm glad, yeah. It was a fun one to ride, and I appreciated the ride around the county, I enjoyed that, so, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, gentlemen.
You noticed
You
that,
showed up to your last meeting.
You didn't tell me about Brian
What's that?
Gies?
Huh?
Brian Gies?
Oh, what? I know nothing.
You were supposed to, what if I didn't show to that one? Are we gonna spring that on me?
He told me he was gonna coordinate with you a
Oh,
little bit,
okay.
so.
Yeah,
Steve,
okay.
it's this time of the year where you go to wherever you're asked to go to.
Hey, Zach.
Only for 2 days.
Give him a little crap.
Oh,
He did-
yeah.
He did
Oh, yeah.
already.
Oh, there you go.
I know I told Steve I'm gonna bring Matt out Monday morning, and he indicated he might not be awake yet, so.
So anyway, Brad, I already took care of our county administrator. Steve's gonna take care of our engineer, so you don't have to follow up.
Oh, I already got it on Matt's calendar, and I sent Anthony an email.
Oh,
already.
Oh, you already got it, so I don't have to follow
Then
through.
I just need the phone number.
Okay,
They're gonna come to Soil and Water on
Oh, okay. So we're next.
yes.
the. I didn't leave the meeting. My computer wanted to reboot. Did it kick me out, maybe?
How's it going, Johnny?
How you doing?
Good.
That's
You get a little hunting this year?
Yeah, I was chasing a certain one. So I wasn't pulling the trigger, and then all of a sudden they started locking down, and there I sit, no deer.
Jeez.
I don't know if I'm gonna make the winter now.
Yeah. At least it didn't snow during the year,
That is
Yep.
true.
like
Yep.
it did the year before.
I'll, buy some beef.
Okay, next we'll move on to
Yeah.
Public Works. Welcome, Steve, and this is gonna be your last official meeting with us.
Yes, it is. All good things come to an end, I guess.
Don't smile so much.
Well, I have to tell you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I got a text from Commissioner Winter early this morning, and he said, "I see that you've got 8 items in the board packet for today. What have you been doing for the last 34 years?" So I'm just trying to clean things up. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I had asked our superintendent to come today because we're getting into the season for snow and ice control. And definitely, this is one of the activities of the department, of our operations, that really defines the agency. And I wanted to work through and present the information to the board so you have a background on what goes through the process when we get into having to call out and send the fleet out for snow and ice control. So John's gonna take you through our operations and how he determines this.
Steve, you
And
know,
I'm gonna pass that on to
I
him.
just want to say, you know, I went through this about 7 years ago when we first started, and this is the one thing that I've always remembered on how much effort you guys do and the thought process that goes through a snowstorm or getting ready for things. And so I thank you for bringing that again. That's something we should talk about every once in a while, because I think the general public just thinks you go drop the snow plow and clean the roads, but there's a lot of thought that goes into this, so thanks, John.
Sure.
And Mr. Chair, if I might get ahead of ourselves just a little bit here, or ahead of myself. John, I went through this earlier,
Yeah.
your slideshow presentation, if you will. The thought of all this stuff and the process, and that keeps our roads in the wintertime the way that that you do, it's not just an overnight sensation. You just don't blink your eyes and we have our roads cleared. This is a very, ahead of time, I'm telling you, impressive presentation you got put together here.
Appreciate it.
And just one other comment, that a wrong decision can really make a mess.
Absolutely, without a doubt, no
Putting a
question.
little pressure on you, John.
Gee, thanks. Oh, we've done it for a number of years, so we can continue it, so anyway, nope, just gonna review how we handle our snow and ice control events, out of our Public Works Department. So maybe we should plow our way through this.
There we go.
Anyway, last year, just a reminder, we were out 28 times, and that's pretty average on a typical year. This year has been relatively quiet yet, but we were out here a week ago, Sunday, on one event. And, but Mother Nature always tends to catch up with itself, so I'm sure to change shortly. Anyway, so we have 728 miles on our road system to cover, so it's a large area, a lot of roads to plow. 450 miles are on our county state aid highway system. We have 238 miles on our county road system. We have 40 miles of gravel road. At first, we kind of leave the gravel roads so they get a little compaction on them so we don't plow the gravel off. And then after that, it's usually about 3 inches or more we'll plow them, so we don't plow those every time. Some of the things that help me out in making decisions if we needed to go out or not, I monitor the weather forecast 24/7, weekends, nights, watch the radar. Sometimes storms are fairly predictable, and other times they kind of pop up out of nowhere. The MDSS system we use to help support us, in a number of other counties throughout the state utilize this system, help me make a better decision. And the biggest factor is when you get closer to the storm, it leads out a 24-hour in advance of the storm. I can see when the snow is going to start, and I can see when it's going to end. What the temperature's gonna do, what the road temp's gonna do, what the wind's gonna do. It also shows you how many pounds of salt to put out on the roads,
And it also shows you, if you don't put any trucks out on the road, what will happen to the roads. And so that's been a huge advantage. I've also used the MnDOT 511 system. It can be utilized by anybody in the public. It will show roads when they're snow covered, partially covered. And they have a lot of cameras throughout the state and also in their plow trucks. So if the storm is moving, typically it moves from west to east, you can see when they start putting their plow trucks out on the road. And so I can view them cameras inside their truck and see what's happening. And then it also helps me out if the storm's coming in from the southwest, you'll see the road starting to be covered on their system and where I need to drive and check. Also, I drive the roads for road inspections, see how they're dusting off, if it looks sticky. Obviously, our county is very large. If I need help, I'll call in the maintenance foreman to assist me. If I need a little more help out east, I'll call the sub-foreman out of Pierce to help me drive. Because snowfalls are kind of like our rain events in the summer. It's not the same amount throughout the whole county. And if we only have snow in the southern part of the county, we don't want to send the whole fleet out on the entire system. It would be a poor use of our resources. I do set 2 alarms. People wonder if I ever oversleep, but I do set 2 alarms. Anyway, timing is critical. We only have 1 crew. We don't have the luxury of multiple shifts. MnDOT runs a night crew. We run 1 shift, so we got to maximize that time. It's critical. Typically, we can plow our roads in 8 hours. We're done. We can run them 12 to 14 hours, and the longest we've ran them is 16 hours. So, and it's critical also because most of our storms, once it snows, behind it a cold front is coming, and we need to get that off sooner than later. Otherwise, it will take more chemical. So these are some of the factors that help me out. When I'm trying to determine if we need to go out, when we have accumulating snow across the entire system and it needs to get off the road, it's a pretty easy decision. The ones that always are a little more of a challenge are the smaller snows, half-inch, inch. What do you do with it? Some are fluffy, and you gotta visualize up ahead of time, because when I'm driving the roads, there's maybe 1 track on the road, maybe there's no tracks on the road, and you gotta picture, what's this road gonna do when traffic wakes up at 4:30, 5:30, 6 o'clock? Are they gonna dust it off? And so you gotta anticipate that. And many times when it's fluffy, it can. When it has more moisture in it, it's gonna be a little stickier. The traffic's gonna compact to the road, and we're gonna need to respond. Of course, road and air temperatures have a factor. Wind is always a big factor, how we'll treat the roads. We don't wanna be melting the roads, and the wind blows and it'll create more of a hazard. Icing conditions, we have seen that, I'd say more numerous in the last maybe 10 years. Freezing rain, we wanna always avoid those events, but we have to treat those roads for that. Most of our trucks, actually all of our trucks have chains, 1 for the steer and 1 for a rear tandem. Because them trucks will slide around, people think they're really heavy, they won't move, but you get them on ice, get on a super of a curve, and they'll take off on you. When it's time to plow, it's typically towards the end of the storm, when I'll call the staff in to start plowing. Once I make that decision, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour from the crew to come in. I give instructions to the driver, what they're gonna see out on the roads, and how they should treat the roads with salt. Once that happens, I will continue to monitor the storm and update the plow drivers. So after you see the plows go out, they start plowing for a while, you can kind of go behind the trucks and see what's happening. Are the roads cleaning up nice, or are we gonna have to spend a little bit longer time out there midday and slush these roads off, where we do some good. A lot of times slush is more dangerous than actually snow, because cars tends to throw vehicles. So we do that and then update the drivers if need be. I do text all the 13 school districts in Morrison County before 5 a.m. because that's when they decide if they're gonna be 2 hours late or cancel for the day. And they've been really receptive to that and appreciate it. You folks also get a text. County administrator, and Tabitha also gets it, and then she posts it out on our website. Is there a certain spot residents can find that, or when you post it?
But they can sign up for the alert.
Okay. We have 20 plow routes. 11 are dispatched out of Little Falls. 6 out of our Pierce facility and 3 out of our Randall shop. The average route is 45 miles long. That's one way. They need to plow it the way back also. There's intersections, there's turn lanes, there's bypass lanes. And then also you're dealing with traffic. So if we have a very typical storm, it takes us 6 to 8 hours to complete the storm. Or plow routes, I should say. And then we'll spend longer if they need, the first 2 roads maybe ran over again because it continued snowing. We'll work a little bit longer to clean those off. Next is our maps. There's a lot of time spent on creating these routes throughout the county. So this is a map of that. The large green dot in the middle is the Little Falls shop. The one to the northwest is Randall, and the one to the east is Pierce. These satellite facilities are very important to us because they provide great efficiency. So those operators report to those shops directly, get in the plow, and then plow routes start close to them shops so they can hit their routes. Operators are assigned the same route year after year. They become familiar with those routes, such as railroad tracks, curb and gutters, medians, and then they also know the trouble spots, where the wind blows, and they take pride in their own routes. Each operator wants their route looking good, and that's what we want to see. So our routes are set up so we are plowing our primary roads first, and then our secondary roads. Our primary roads are our most heavily traveled roads. And we have it set up so the plows aren't doing one road, lifting up, going to another section. It's got a pattern where they continue to plow. Who plows what roads? Morrison County, we plow our county state aid highways, numbers 1 through 105. County roads are numbers 200 through 287. MnDOT, they take care of Highway 10, 115, and 371, state highways 25, 27, 28, and 238. There's 16 municipalities within our county. They take care of their own streets. However, we do have some roads that run through a number of our municipalities. Townships, there's 30. A lot of them plow their own, or some of them contract out. Our sand salt options, this is what we use to treat the roads. We got 2 options. It's 100% salt or 50-50 mixture. In the past, we have always used the 50-50 mixture. Going forward this year, I am gonna switch it to 100% salt. That doesn't mean we're gonna be putting more salt on the roads. So an example, there's a couple reasons why our equipment has improved over the time. The technology in the cab to control what's coming out the back. It's hooked up with ground speed, so when the truck's going slower or faster, it can adjust. Also, our augers in the back, we've updated some of our augers over the years. The augers in the back used to have bigger flightings, and then over time, they've made them smaller, and the diameter of the shaft inside get larger, so you can control the amount of material a lot more accurately that flows out. Salt tends to flow more than sand mixture, so you have to have plates in there so it does that. So our equipment has advanced to handle that. And an example why I say we're not putting more salt out, so if we're putting 400 pounds per lane mile at 50-50, that means 200 pounds are salt, 200 pounds are sand. We're gonna eliminate that sand, because sand just gives you a little bit of grit for traction for a temporary amount of time, and your salt is what melts the road. So then we're gonna tell our operators, we set our controls at 200 pounds of salt, and that's what's coming out. So we're not increasing the salt. And our goal is eventually, because the big push is to reduce salt usage. And we can really dial these down. We can dial down to 80 pounds per mile. And so that's the plan there. There is an option we can purchase if need to be, a clear lane product, which has mag chloride. It will melt down to 5 degrees. It is more expensive, so that's why we don't purchase a bunch of it, but if we need to, we can. And then sometimes when the roads get so cold, it doesn't pay to melt them.
If I may, Mr. Chair, to interrupt, let's go, and Steve's already explained this maybe more for the public. This salt is pretty easy to get, isn't it? You kind of just let it call someone up and it's there, right?
Yeah,
No, I know that's not the way it works.
Yeah, that's not the way it works, sorry. Usually, so there's contracts that go out, state contracts, and we put in by May 1st about, or in that neighborhood, we have to enter a quantity for the year, what we're gonna take. And we contracted 3,000 ton, and so that's done early in the year. You have to take 80% of that quantity, and you can go 20% beyond that.
So you better know how much salt you're gonna hopefully need for that year. It's kind of a guessing game, right?
Yeah, you're always planning year to year, because you don't know exactly what the winter, you don't want to be short.
Right.
But it's important to have the inventory capacity too at the end of the year.
Yeah. And we do have salt sheds, not only in Little Falls, but also at our satellite facilities. In Randall Pierce have salt sheds. Oh, go ahead.
Just a couple more comments on the treated and the brine. Could you roll back that? You know, this is the key in working towards trying to reduce the quantities of salt that are going to be put out. It's estimated that when you're using salt or a salt sand mix, that you probably are losing 30% if it's not treated or it's not brined. Because what that does is it allows you to put down a narrower row on the road that then melts, and that brine is what breaks the bond between the ice and the road. Treated salt makes it stick better, brine makes it stick better. So what John is working towards through all of this, going to straight salt, is that when we get to the point, all of our trucks either are utilizing brine or we're gonna be utilizing treated materials, that the overall quantity that is being utilized in say on an annual basis goes down.
Yep, exactly. And currently, we don't have our own brine making system. We got a good relationship with MnDOT here locally, and they allow us to fill up, and they don't charge us extra. They just keep track of our gallons, and then we just pay them back with the salt it took to make that brine. So, works out really good. And it definitely, when you add brine to salt, it definitely keeps it from scattering. It holds it to that center of the road, and then when traffic is going by with their speed, it sticks, it just doesn't blow off to the shoulder of the road. How do we treat our roads? Typically, every time is usually the hills, curves, and intersections. Those are the spots travelers usually have some issues at. When roads are ice covered or compacted, we'll center line the entire road. So that picture to the right is an example of center line sanding, and then we'd come back later in the day and slush that off. And then, of course, there's times when the temperature is very cold or windy, and we won't sand at all or treat the roads. Tandems are kind of our main workhorses. They do all our plowing. Again, they're used throughout the year for different maintenance activities also. But during this time of the year, this is our main piece of equipment. Motor graders, you folks know from the past, they can make a big difference on the roads. It's when you can see the trucks aren't doing the job, making that decision faster to put 5 of our motor graders out on the roads, it's huge. It makes a world of difference. And when you can scrape them down that far, then again, you're reducing your salt usage. These are just a picture of the tandem on the left and a motor grader on the right. Those are the 2 main pieces of equipment we use. We have 21 tandems. 1 is for a spare in case we have a major breakdown. We have 1 that we can back up. We have 5 motor graders. We have 3 front end loaders, 1 at each stop so they can load the trucks. We have 1 skid steer with a snow blower, 1 tractor with a 3-point snow blower. Those are used to clean up around bridges, the guardrails when the banks start getting high. Also intersections, when the banks are getting high at the intersections for a couple of reasons, for sight distance. And then also, when we get the northwest wind blows, it's always a trouble spot. If there's a bank, then it blows snow out into the road at those intersections. We got 1 pickup with a plow. We use it to plow our parking lot out at our shop in Little Falls. Also, we plow the Belle Prairie Park Road and also the park and ride parking lot down at the Sioux Line Trail with that. A new tandem and plow equipment, current costs now, and they always trend to keep climbing up, is 265,000. We have purchased used trucks in the past to help get some of our old fleet out, to help change over so we can get more underbellies on our truck. We purchased a couple years ago that we used last year, so it just helped us get some of them old trucks up. Snow and ice control equipment, 2005 and older, we have 5 of those trucks left. Those do not have underbellies, so we're getting close there. It just takes a process to change that much equipment out. You can see the wing is mounted towards the front because there's no underbelly, and it's just a fixed one-way plow. And then the picture to the right, we have 2006 and newer. We have 16 of those, and they have a rear-mounted wing with an underbody. So we have 16 with underbodies. And if you drive the roads or if you pay enough attention, you'll see a big difference where these trucks are on the road. That underbelly just takes a little bit more off versus not having one. So we're getting there. We're getting close.
So, Mr. Chair, John, if I may,
Yeah.
do you run that underbelly all the time?
Yep, pretty much, unless the road is really dry and there's just maybe a narrow little strip, you'll burn out that cutting edge.
Yep.
But typically, most of the time, if it's doing good, you want to get it off because you're using less material.
Sure.
Treating the roads.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. In the past, the plow was a pretty much a fixed plow on all the old trucks. You couldn't turn it, you couldn't tilt it. And then as we looked into changing styles on our last 6 trucks, we went to a reversible plow and also tilting. And the advantages on those, you can clean the intersections faster because you can turn it. And also, another big advantage is it gets a little bit more compaction off the road. Reason B, it's a little bit heavier. Sometimes you can square up that moldboard and that changes it. But the tilt is also a big factor because you can always keep that cutting edge sharp. And that takes another layer off, and then of course you have the underbelly. So that'll be the future. It's been on our last 6 trucks. Cutting edges typically last 6 to 8 times, so they'll last 6 to 8 times when we go on a route. So, and they cost $228 per set. We switched to carbide blades under our underbellies. They have a rubber insert. You don't have to change them near as often. They last about for a whole season, once a year. They're quieter in the cab. They have a rubber insert, so they're not as loud and a lot less vibration. The down pressure on the underbelly is 500 to 700 pounds. So, and our one-way plow is probably about 25, I think it's around 25 pounds per square inch. So that's why these underbellies are a big difference. And the more you mechanically can remove snow compaction from the road, you're reducing salt usage on the back end. This is a picture of some controls in the truck. The older trucks, we have 7 left. Those were more levered style, and your shoulder would get a little tired by the end of the route because you're constantly moving it. The 14 newer trucks, it's a joystick. You can pretty much move with the palm of your hand. And then talking about controls for the auger, if the picture with the screen, that does have GPS capabilities if we ever wanted, but we can go in there and look and see what the operator's using per storm or for the year. So then we got a good handle what's going out on the roads. All our trucks have a 9-inch auger, and that's what I was talking about earlier. The flighting's on there. We have a 4-inch flighting, so that has changed. Back when I first started, you wanted a great big auger to get as much material out as possible. And it just, you could not fine tune what you were putting out on the road. And then as the equipment improved, they made them flighting smaller so you could control to a smaller amount. So at a 50-50 mix, we're putting 15 pounds per revolution. If we go salt, we're putting 13 pounds per revolution. And our cutting, so our motor graders, the down pressure on there, so you know, is 3,000 pounds. So on our front plow, we have about 25 pounds per square inch. On the underbelly, we have 500 to 700 pounds. And on the motor grader, we have 3,000 pounds. And that's why you can really cut at times when the conditions are right. You will wear a set out in one day, so the mechanics will have to go out there and change them. Anyway, just another thing for the MnDOT 511 sign. That site can be utilized by anybody in the public if you're traveling or going on vacation. That site will show you if the road's got snow or not, or there's cameras, so it's a good handy tool if you're traveling. You know, I definitely appreciate our operators do excellent work, and I would always like to recognize them, because I just make the decision when to go out, how we're gonna handle the storm, and then they do the rest of the work. And so we got a super good crew. I do believe we give a very high level of service to our highway users in this county. And I appreciate Steve and you, the county board, that gives us the resources to make this happen.
Sounds good. Thank you, John. Does anybody got any questions for John?
Mr. Chair, John, I would just like to say, I think you do just a little bit more than just make a decision. There's a little bit more to it than that, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And of course, the staff also, good grief, thank all of them for the job they do, because I contend to anyone, when it comes time for winter, Morrison County has the best roads, period.
Appreciate it.
No further discussion, period, the best. And that's because of the crew that takes care of the roads. And that didn't happen yesterday. No. Happened with a lot of trial and error, but it is what it is, and I contend again, we have the best roads. So, thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, it's, you know, the best roads is one thing, but you guys communicate so well with the schools and, you know, obviously as county commissioners, and that's really important too, because the fact that you wanna know where the roads are bad or not, and you guys, again, you, John, your staff and Steve, they do a great job of, getting the roads cleared, but I say, everybody knows pretty much, where and when, the plows will be out too, so I thank you both for that.
I've said it before, but I have to say it again, when the department gets phone calls from out-of-county residents asking us to come into their county to plow, you know they're doing something right.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
John, I really appreciate the text that you sent us.
Good.
Every
Yeah.
morning, and I know there's some townships, I think you're sending that to also.
Yeah.
So that they're aware of what time we go out, why we're going out, what we're doing. I really appreciate that, because people ask, you know, like you say, when you have, it takes 6 hours to get all the way around, some people think you're not coming.
Yeah, right, for sure.
So, I thank you for that.
Thank you very much, John. Good job.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it, John.
Keep up the good work, John.
Stay safe, keep smiling.
That's right. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thank you. Steve, you got?
So that was a good report from the maintenance division, and I wanted to make another report for our construction engineering division. We completed all of the projects that we had proposed in our 2021 project schedule. We had carryover from 2020 when we had the yearly storm. So we finished that work up early this spring and then carried through with our 2021 work. We just finished up in Randall, the bridge replacement over the Little Elk on the north end of Randall and at 100th Avenue for Elmdale Township. So, Mr. Chairman will be handing off a clean slate for Tony when he comes in, just to start a new program.
Excellent.
Number 3 is a request for the county board to authorize the 2 projects, 60130 and 599071. That are the 2 bridges, the one at Randall and the one for Elmdale Township. They're substantially complete. The resolutions will allow us when everything is complete and they're final to make final payment. We're asking the board to adopt these 2 resolutions.
Make a motion to approve,
Motion
Mr.
by
Chair.
Commissioner Lemire, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Jelinski. Is there any further discussion? Is this a roll call vote? Okay, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson, aye. Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher. Motion carries. Mike,
Chairman.
I'll start with you for now.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we previously had discussed a request for a right-of-way revocation on Cassaw 4 Basel Road. That is just to the south of Cable Road between Swanville and Sobieski. During the original construction of many of our roads, there are some areas where, through pastures or wooded areas where there were hills or knobs, that extended right-of-way was acquired in order to have enough dirt to build the road itself. Well, now that the roads are built, that road is built, that right-of-way really isn't doing us any good, and it requires property owners for setbacks and fence construction, that type of thing. It can be difficult to deal with. This is one of those situations. We've revoked rights of way in other situations back. This has a 105-foot right-of-way, and we're proposing that we would revoke 25 feet and go to 80 foot of right-of-way, which we firmly believe is more than adequate for our needs. We'd request that the board would adopt this resolution to revoke that right-of-way.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Any further questions?
I just have a question, Mr. Chair. Steve, does county staff go out and mark end to end where the line actually would be?
Yes, in this situation, and we do that too when someone is going to build a building, they call to the department, we'll go out and locate the right of way for them so they know where it is.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Any other questions? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the project over the Little Elk north of Randall that we just recently constructed was built to accommodate the Camp Ripley Veteran State Trail into the future. The expectation of that alignment and where it's going to go is on the east side of County State Aid Highway 1. As we move forward in 2023, County State Aid Highway 1 from Randall to CASA 5 is in the state STIP, and so we'll be receiving federal money for the pavement preservation project there. In preparation for that, we replaced the bridge over the Little, well, we'd like to, and are planning to replace the bridge over Hay Creek in 2022. This agreement essentially is the same agreement where the DNR would cover the costs for the additional work in the construction of that bridge to accommodate the Camp Ripley Veteran State Trail when it crosses the Hay Creek. So we're requesting that the board would adopt the resolution, entering into the agreement and authorizing the chairman and administrator to execute the agreement.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is the continuation of the $75,000 Morrison County was successful in obtaining for the Morrison County Recreational Trail Association for purchase of a groomer. The resolution now that we're requesting you adopt would take that money that the DNR is going to give to the county, and we'd pass it through to the association for the purchase of that groomer. And it essentially passes the terms and conditions of the DNR grant with the county onto them, that they need to follow the same conditions that we do.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion on that?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Is there any further discussion? If not, roll call. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'd ask that Pam and her staff from Employment Enterprises will come up as we present the next request for board action.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, why don't we have them introduce themselves, if you would, please?
Hi, I'm Pam Baltus, the Executive Director at Employment Enterprise.
Good morning, I'm Kathy Rutz, I'm the Business Director at Employment Enterprises.
Good morning, I'm Mary Watucki, and I'm the Employment Service Coordinator.
Okay, well, thank you and welcome.
And Employment Enterprises Incorporated previously was the DAC, Developmental Achievement Center, and changed their name a number of years ago. It provides quality work environment for disabled individuals. And one of the ways that they accommodate that is through recycling of materials that are generated in our county and around our county. And we have been in conversation, and the board has had discussions previously about a project that the EEI has been working on in obtaining equipment and space to increase their capabilities of recycling glass. And it asked Pam and her staff to come in and discuss that project with you. They worked very diligently and have obtained about 2/3 of the cost of a project that would go from recycling 70 ton per year to 500 ton per year in support of our solid waste management plan. And they're requesting that we would help support the final requirements in order to accommodate that through a grant to them to purchase equipment and space. So I'm going to hand this off to Pam to add to that and answer any questions the board may have.
Sure, thank you, and I want to thank Steve and congratulate him. Steve and his staff have been very supportive of us for a number of years, helping us with a variety of projects and wisdom. We do provide services to around 115 people with disabilities throughout our communities, and the recycling opportunity gives us job training opportunities for them so that we can then move them on to community jobs. This particular project was started with a grant application to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We were awarded somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000. I don't remember the exact numbers. And the idea is that we had equipment specifically built. This is a sample of what comes out of the first piece of equipment. We lovingly call it Geraldine. We do have Geraldine. She's in our warehouse right now, getting tested and run through her paces. 2 more pieces of equipment we need, so it goes through here and it comes out in pebble-sized glass. This is all the beer that Morrison County drinks. We get their bottles. We recycle that. So the second piece of equipment, which is also grant-funded, is a hammer mill, which grinds it down into sand. And then a circular screener, which will sort it into the different grades that you need for sandblast. And we have a verbal relationship or commitment with ABS here in town to take all the sandblast that we can produce. So we have a market for it. Right now, we're able to get rid of our glass for $15 a ton, and sandblast we can sell for $200 a ton. So we're hoping this project will sustain itself long-term. We had intended originally to carve out a space in our warehouse, but since the project has grown, we've come to the conclusion that that's not feasible. So we are looking at an addition off our warehouse to house this project. We have an agreement with Todd County Transfer Station to take more of their glass to get us to the 500 ton. We have a commitment to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to meet that 500 ton by the end of the 3rd year of the grant. The pressure's on. We've got a year left, and it has taken this long to get the equipment built. And right now, we have a contractor who's doing the construction project 20 weeks out to get the steel to put the building up. So now we are into spring of our 2nd year. So God willing, and the dollars come through, we will get that building built and get this thing up and running so that we can meet that goal by October of next year. So, questions? Mary, Mary has been intimately involved in this in the research. So, Mary, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
No.
Commissioner Lemire.
I just have one question for Steve, if I may. Not only does this benefit the 150 individuals with disabilities, it'll also benefit the county by our recycling grant, our recycling program. Can you give a little example on how this will help with that?
Well, the county is under legislative mandate to reach a 35% goal of recycling solid waste within our county. We've been able to meet that in the past, but it's been becoming a more difficult struggle. The closing of IWCO is going to be detrimental, and they recycled a lot of materials that counted towards that goal. Also, glass has been a very difficult item to dispose of here as prices have crashed for recyclable materials, which then has made it easier to dispose of it as solid waste and not as a recyclable. The county overall, in our solid waste management plan, has really focused more on residential recycling than commercial, and providing outlets for commercial businesses within the county. This will be one of the major steps for us in supporting this to improve the recycling of glass for our bars and restaurants and those type of operations in Morrison County. And so it's a heavy material that counts, it adds up fast towards that 35% goal. And so it's going to be very beneficial as we continue to try to make sure we meet that.
Very good. And then, will residents be able to drop glass off there, or how do you get your product?
Mary, you want to address that?
Currently, right now, we do a lot of our glass through commercial. We also are working with Bob and Linda Lemire. We do their township recycling. We also do Scandia Valley's recycling as well, so that we're getting quite a bit of our glass through that way. Right now, we do not have a curbside drop-off currently for the residents. I don't know what the process will be in the future, but right now, we're just trying to get this up and running.
Very good.
I think a couple of things also to that, Commissioner Lemire, is that the glass recycling at the landfill, that is a residential drop-off site where we have some control over that in working this with EEI, that they get those materials. And also, Bob Lemire is moving into the city recycling program, so there's another effort there to pick that up.
Sounds like mine's making it over to you already anyway, so. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This weekend, I had the opportunity to join an organization called, or be with an organization called Partners in Policy Making. Doesn't make any difference, but that's where I was. Kind of ironic that you folks are here today, because one of the questions, while I was on a forum, if you will, with this organization in the cities last Saturday, was the question came up, what do you do, and not necessarily directed to me, but what do you do, commissioners? There was three of us, one from Hennepin County and one from Washington County, and myself from Morrison County that was there, answering. What do you do for us as a county? And again, wasn't directed to me, but just hypothetically. And us is, what do you do for community, quite honestly? I think what we're doing today, I believe what we're doing today is for community, is for our community. I hate to use the word disabled community. I'm going to use the word challenged. For our challenged community, what we're talking about doing today is a win, win, win over and over and over again. Not for one individual, not for two, not for the city of Little Falls, but for our community. This is just a huge thing that we're doing, or that we're talking of doing, a huge thing that EEI is doing, and quite honestly, showing the support I am for community, and this is community. I never want to ever be the guy ever that is going to look away from our challenged community. Our challenged community is what it is. They are what they are. We are who we are, and we need to support that. So I thank you, all three of you, for being here today. But this is a very important thing that we're talking about. But it's not an important thing for me. Not an important thing for you. It's an important thing for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Winchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anyway, just kind of give you a background, I was exposed to Morrison County DAC back in the 70s. Matter of fact, I just spoke with the past director here Saturday, and I know him very well. And the reason I got to know this is my wife used to work back there in the 70s. She's gonna get mad at me because I'm aging her maybe a little bit, you know, so those are things, and what I see. And again, it was new to me, you know, too, about this organization. But, and again, to follow up what Commissioner Lemire said, you know, about the 150 disability people there, it not only, you guys help them out, and again, I've taken a tour here, I don't know, probably 5, 6 years ago. It helps them out, but it helps the parents out. It just, you know, it's a community thing. And again, there's a resource that you're getting out of the, and I keep calling it the DAC, but it's the Employment Enterprises, you know, so. And I think you'd probably know who the past director is, I'm sure Pam does, you know, so, and like I say, it was just kind of heartwarming to see this. I mean, some of these employees, I mean, they're very intense, they do a great job there, you know, so whether it's, whatever, there's just so many things you have going on there. And again, I think, again, this is something that'll not only work for the community, but it's also gonna work, you know, as far as our landfill goes. The question I have, Mr. Chair, and this would be directed to Steve, if upon approval, and I'm gonna vote for this, affirmative on that, where is this money coming from?
We're proposing that it'll be coming out of the fund balance for the solid waste fund.
So it's not coming out of the general fund of the Morrison County taxpayers, correct?
It's coming out of the solid waste fund, and it is appropriate because of the recycling efforts that it provides.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate you coming to the board, and again, for the work that you guys do at Employment Enterprises.
Thank you.
One of the advantages of being board chair, I get to talk last and they say everything I want to. I would agree with everything that they've said, and we thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to enter into agreement with EEI to provide them with $100,000 to complete their revenue needed for the proposed glass recycling.
And I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Is this a roll call by any chance? Okay. All in favor, signify by,
Because then we'll use our template grant and
so roll call.
authorize it.
Okay.
So it should be a roll.
Commissioner Lemire,
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
And aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck
Happy
to everyone.
Thanksgiving. Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, then finally, we want to talk about extension of the landfill services agreement. I provided some background and history to kind of how we got into this and how it started. And so.
That was pretty neat, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, you can see some of the issues that we ran into.
Yeah, it was,
It was kind of a turmoil at the time.
yes, you came a long way.
It has, yes, there's been a lot of work put into it. I remember when all the garbage trucks surrounded the courthouse because the landfill closed and they didn't know where they were gonna go with our garbage. It took a long time. It was not easy in dealing with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the process of who is gonna take responsibility and liability and those type of things. And we ended up in a lawsuit with our neighboring county and those type of things that we overcame. Those were big issues, and we eventually did overcome them. We permitted the facility, and we began operations. And here are some of the things that have come out of that. The tipping fee history on the next sheet demonstrates, we started in 1993 at $60 a ton. When we were into some of this turmoil area, we had projected to the board that we would be in excess of $100 a ton starting. We never, ever started at that, and we have not reached that at this point, and it's looking like it's gonna be a long time before it ever gets to that. So we've been able to have a good, stable tip fee, meaning a good, stable cost to the residents for disposal of their solid waste. You can see on the next sheet, as we look at other facilities and other counties, where their tip fees fall. We're keeping a very reasonable tip fee for the residents of our county as you compare some of the other tip fees that counties have for the facilities that they're operating. Along with that, though, a number of these counties have property tax and assessments that per parcel that are added onto that to help support their facilities and their programs. We've not had to do that. We do levy $255,000, and that levy typically is to provide things like Galen to be able to handle solid waste complaints. It's not really associated with the landfill. Those dollars are more recycling type projects and the individual that manages the solid waste issues in the department. So when you look at the milestones that we've had over those years since we took over, we've built the Financial Assurance Trust so that if we had some type of compliance issue that would be available to fund that. That's at $4 million currently. Cell 6 is constructed with no bonding for it, and we intend that we'd begin filling in the winter of 2022. When we constructed Cell 6, we took out 60,000, actually 80,000 tons of gravel. We've probably used about 20,000. We currently have stockpiled 60,000 tons of gravel for our system and the city and local agencies that may want to purchase that from us. It is available. So it provides a good source of materials locally here for township cities that are close by to that facility. Our groundwater quality corrective action from the previous unlined cells are showing great and substantial improvements as we've come along, and we'll continue to treat that until it's determined that we can shut those systems off. We're getting closer to what we'd call a sustainable self-contained system, in which the leachate generated by precipitation moving through waste that's collected and treated is recirculated into the waste mass. At some point in time when the waste mass is great enough, we'd see very little land application of treated leachate, which is the goal. Now we have a number of things that are going to be coming up. The solid waste management plan will be coming up in 2023. Our certificate of need is being worked on currently, which is another document and permitting requirement in order to accept waste at the facility. And then in 2023, our regular general permit for SW15 will be coming due, and that will have to be worked through the Pollution Control Agency. So in accomplishing all of this, the county has always had a private landfill manager. It was Logering Contracting that originally came on when the county took the facility over. That became Falls Waste in '87 and Little Falls Waste in '97, and that's who we have entered into the landfill service agreement with after that. And so the current contract extension has some revisions in it. We'd be establishing Saturday hours as 8 to 12 year-round. Currently, there is a time period in the summer where it goes to 2:30 that has very little use, and with labor the way it is, it's difficult to be able to serve the facility for just a few customers during that time period afternoon. So proposed that it would go 8 to 12 all year long. If a holiday lands on a Monday, similar to the county, the landfill would close, and those workers would be able to have a holiday on Monday if the holiday's on Sunday. It clarifies that Morrison County is the owner-operator and Little Falls Waste is the landfill manager. There are specific environmental indemnification terms and conditions, especially associated with PFOSs. Then it also, though, provides an exclusion if there's any willful or intentional misconduct by the contractor. It allows filling through Cell 7. Our Little Falls Waste will be doubling liability insurance coverage from $1 million to $2 million, and their comprehensive insurance from $3 to $6 million. It provides for a reopener if we have 65,000 tons per year. For 2 years in a row, we currently sit at about 40,000 tons. And it provides for a reopener when we have approximately 2 years of remaining capacity in Cell 7. The board has been actively involved in the negotiation of this contract, and our recommendation is that we adopt this, and the board would authorize the chairman to sign the agreement.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Jelinski, is there any further discussion? Commissioner Wincher?
Again, this is something that took us, a few meetings here, no more than just one about this contract. But again, I just think that we are, as a county, have a great advantage by having Mr. Meyer in charge of this as far as the landfill goes. And again, I hope we can work many, many more years with him before the next contract comes due.
I agree.
Jeff, I want to thank you very much for all the good work you do out at the landfill for us. You keep our interest at heart all the time, and we really appreciate that. So thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is roll call. Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
And aye. Motion carries.
That ends.
Your desk must be clear now, Steve, huh?
If I may, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair,
Yeah.
speak about, or you want to,
Okay.
you go ahead first,
Well-
Mr. Chair.
Steve, I just want to thank you. I've been commissioner for 7 years, and all the years before that, our roads, people talk about our roads all the time in Morrison County, and you can tell when you cross the county line where the roads and stuff are. And we really appreciate the work that you've done and that you've overseen all these years. Our landfill is one of the best in the state, and we can be proud of that. We just built a new cell, and we were able to pay for that, and we still got about $3 million in reserves. And that's all been done with your guidance and stuff. The equipment, we buy equipment, you tell us, a new loader's $260,000 or a truck, and you go out and look for good used stuff sometimes, and you bring us that, and that saves us a couple $100,000. And we really appreciated that. And the people that you have over at your office and everybody, they just do a wonderful job. I can't say enough about them. People might get upset sometimes when something just isn't right, but I know that you and everybody that works for you has done a wonderful job to help us to deliver the product. And I really appreciate the fact that whenever I've called you, you've always got back to me immediately if you didn't answer the phone. And you've taken every issue that we've ever had, and you come to a resolution, whether it's satisfying or not, you at least tell me why. And I can explain that to people, and I really appreciate working with you all these years, and I thank you very much because you've left our county in great shape. And I hope the person that takes your place can do the same. So thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your retirement, Steve, and
Thank you.
thanks for everything you've done. Appreciate you very much. You'll be missed.
Thank you very much.
And I agree with everything the chair, but I want to add one other thing. Pretty much everybody knows we have great roads and everything does here, but I just had a board meeting here last week with a different committee I'm on, and what the other county commissioners from these other counties were saying about you, and that we're so fortunate that we as a county had you for a engineer for all these years, and you, not just for the county, but your name is well-known out there in other counties, so I just want to make sure that you realize that, Steve, because, and I'm sure the rest of the board too, your presence will be missed.
I thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to share two things. One, as a new commissioner, first winter as a new commissioner, I had a call and it dealt with a gravel county road that was too slippery. I called Steve on a Saturday morning. I remember it very clearly. I was in my shed, called Steve, and I said, Steve, I don't know what to tell you, but I've got this issue with this slippery gravel road. He said, I'll take care of it. I said, huh? How do you take care of a slippery gravel county road? I'll take care of it. It was done. The road was sanded, it was salted, it was done, whatever. Doesn't matter what he did, but it was taken care of. Yesterday at 4:30 or thereabouts, I received a solid waste event call. Sent a email to our solid waste officer, if you will, who I knew was going to get that information this morning and take care of or get directed or do whatever it is that they were going to do. That person's not at work today. 8 o'clock this morning, I got a call from Steve Bukowski. I'm dealing on it. I don't know how far we have to go to, to find a person that's gonna replace you. I mean, he's not here today. I hope that person is gonna do what you've done. I can't say enough for what you've done for Morrison County, what you've done to help me whenever I've needed something. There's never been a question. Public Works has been there and it's been taken care of. So, Steve, thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate all the kind words. You're very generous, and I'm sure that Tony will do as well and better than I. He's a lot smarter than I am. And I have to say, you know, a county engineer doesn't last 34 years in a county without good county boards. You know, you can give me all those accolades, but if I wasn't able to work with the county boards and get the county boards to go along with what we were trying to do, none of it would have been accomplished. So thank you guys very much for that.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Best to you, Steve.
Thanks.
Okay, administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first thing on the administrator report is the employment agreement with our new county administrator. It is not in your packet, but I did place one in front of you, and I know that I emailed it to you last night. I would point out that this county administrator will be put on the grade and pay scale according to our county policies. They will be a part of our county policies. This is recommended both from the hiring firm that we worked with to find this quality candidate, as well as our HR attorney. So even though they are within our policy, within the county, this was a recommendation. So I would move this forward for approval.
You get a motion on that? Got a
I'll
motion
make
by
it.
Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Is there any further discussion? I just want to thank Matt. I see you were here yesterday and you're here today and you don't start till the end of the month. So I appreciate the fact that you're very interested in this job. Thank you. We have a motion, a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, thank you. The next thing on the agenda is a contract with our public defender. This is an every 2-year contract. We are giving a $100 increase for both of the next 2 years, which has been a standard practice. It is with Scott Wunderlich, and he represents parents in CHIPS matters, which is a child protection and need of services matter that is part of our social services system.
Got a
So-
motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Lemire, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Jelinski. Is there any further discussion?
I just have one question, Mr. Chair, or a statement, I don't know. Is this, and maybe Brad, you know, I don't know, is this state required? Or is this county required? Federally?
So when we had the unallotments in 2008, the state discontinued paying for public defenders for our work in child protection. So this was one of those ways the state could save money by saying, counties, you now have to contract for this service. So,
Good enough.
so I might have put a little emotion in that because it was frustrating at the time and it's still a little frustrating, so.
Good enough, thank you.
Rightfully so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
The next agenda item is to appoint Larry Korf, Mark Fighton, Dave Fisher, and Greg Gangle to the Rich Prairie Sewer and Water District Board.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
And then just one other thing I'd point out is that the Chaplain Pizza fundraiser is this Sunday from 11 to 1 at the VFW. It's an annual fundraiser for Greg Valentine, our chaplain at the jail. So if you're hungry and in need of pizza, please feel free to stop over there. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we got committee reports in upcoming schedules. Randy, would you be willing to start us off? with
I
that?
would love to. The dates are gonna be, Tabitha?
November 28th through December 11th.
Through December 11th. All right. So on the 30th, we'll be having a planning session at 8:30, which is a Tuesday. I'm not sure if they have a planning commission that night or not.
They do.
Okay, so that would be at
6.
6 o'clock. And then on Friday, we have a TSWAC meeting, but it's gonna be at Public Works at 8:30. On Friday the 3rd, then of course AMC is from the Monday to the 6th through the 8th, so we will not be having anything there. We have a board meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, on Thursday at 9 o'clock, I believe. And then at 6 PM, we have Truth and Taxation here. And that's all I have on my calendar, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Jelinski.
On the 29th at 9:30 in the morning, I'm going to be at the GRA building with Representative Creshaw, talking about housing, and that's probably about the best I can tell you on that one. At 6 o'clock at night, there's a Good Neighbors EMS meeting, and that is at St. Gabriel's Hospital. On the 30th, I think we also have a ditch meeting after planning. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I have a 911 telecommunicators work group meeting, which is virtual. On the 2nd, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a State Emergency Communications Board Legislative Committee meeting, which is virtual. On the 4th, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, is the Harding Christmas Horsing Around Parade, downtown Harding, Minnesota. On the 7th, I've also got that 911 telecommunicators work group, but due to AMC, I won't be there. On the, let's see, we got the 9th, 10th, and 11th, or excuse me, on the 10th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board RAC meeting, and that should be virtual also. And Mr. Chair, I believe that's all.
I think I'm covered on everything on the 9th. Randy, did you say Truth and Taxation?
Yep, at 6 PM, yep.
Yep, then I'm covered on everything.
Would there be a Board of Adjustments at all on any of them? Like the 7th? Should there be?
On what day?
During AMC, I don't
We had
know.
one-
Oh, AMC.
Yeah, we had one that there wasn't one. You know, they sent us out an email, so I don't think so because we are at AMC that week.
One more thing for you, Mr. Chair, the CHB meeting, the Community Health Board meeting on November 29th. I know you might not be able to make it, but I would just make note of that, and I think Greg made note of that to Tabitha. Yep.
Where's that at?
It's gonna be virtual.
Hello, Will.
It's for Greg and
Okay.
I. Okay, that's all I have.
The only thing I have to add is on the 29th, HRA at 9 o'clock.
All right.
Mr. Chair, that being said, motion to adjourn.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much.